We are under attack in so many different ways. One of those ways is we have been infiltrated by China, and there are Chinese spies everywhere, and they're at the highest level. We now find out that we have Kathy Hochul's assistant, the governor of California, high-level advisor, has been being paid by the Chinese government to help them out. How much is your citizenship worth? How much would you sell your country out for? Peter Schweizer is here to tell us any details that he has. He's been following the Chinese infiltration for a very long time. Welcome, Peter. How are you?
Hey, I'm great, Glenn. Always good to be with you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. So in your book, Blood Money, Why the Powerful Turn a Blind Eye While China Kills Americans, you talk about how many, and both on the Republican and the Democratic side, how many people are selling their souls to China. Tell me about this case. What do you know about it?
Yeah, so Linda Sun was the deputy chief of staff for Kathy Hochul. Before that, she served for years in senior positions for Andrew Cuomo. She was his deputy chief diversity officer, for example. And essentially what she's being charged with in a 60-page indictment is getting millions of dollars from the Chinese government and from the CCP. And she took her position and used it for the benefit of China. So, for example, she blocked representatives from the Taiwanese government from even having access to the governor's office.
Wow.
She altered state messages that were important to Chinese officials. So she'd literally change a message to benefit them. She also helped Chinese officials travel to the United States. She issued unauthorized invitations that weren't approved by anyone else that allowed government officials to come into the United States. And she gave Chinese officials access to private New York government conversations during the COVID-19 crisis, explaining how they were going to respond. She would actually patch them in on these high-level group telephone calls. And in exchange for that, according to prosecutors, she received a lot of benefits from the Chinese government. She was able to buy a $4.1 million Long Island home, a $2.1 million condo in Hawaii. She and her husband also bought a 2024 Ferrari Roma. And I guess maybe my personal favorites is, Glenn, she's also accused of getting 16 meals that were prepared by a Chinese government chef. They were Nanjing-style salted duck, which sounds pretty good to me.
Yeah, I mean, it changes. Once you hear the salted duck thing, that she got 16 of them, you think, well, maybe. It changes things dramatically. Why did it take so long for this to become apparent? What does her husband do, by the way? Do you know?
Well, her husband in New York ran a sort of export-import business, a little bit vague. but the other thing,
Really?
Glenn, is that she apparently, according to the indictments, think about this, she's a senior state official for Andrew Cuomo and the current governor of New York. She apparently ran her own business in China, in mainland China, which is where she was born. She's a naturalized U.S. citizen. But she actually had a business in China that nobody knew about it. And the Chinese government also apparently gave her cousin a cushy job. That is mentioned among the indictments as well.
How many more are there? How widespread is this, Peter?
Oh, it's a massive problem. And look, this is something you and I have been talking about since 2018. You've talked about it on BlazeTV, and that is that they have avoided really enforcing the Foreign Agents Registration Act, which requires if you do anything to benefit a foreign government or a foreign government-linked business, you are required to file with the Department of Justice. And they didn't really support this law at all. And then, of course, they've used it against various Republicans, which, look, if they're guilty of it, they're guilty of it. They should be charged.
Yeah.
But it's been selective. This case was a long time coming. And, of course, there is that, I think, strong case for these same violations that took place by Hunter Biden. taking millions of dollars, and yet
from the
he is not being
Chinese
charged with anything. Yeah.
Correct.
Yep.
Correct.
By the Chinese, by the Ukrainians, by the Romanians, by the Russians. I think you could make a fair case in every one of those instances when it relates to Hunter Biden. And the Department of Justice now, in their tax case against Hunter Biden, has even said that he was running a foreign influence peddling scheme, but he has yet to be charged under this Foreign Agents Registration Act, which is what Melinda's son has now been charged with.
And he got more than salted duck. Well, maybe. I mean, I saw some of the videos. He might have. Anyway, let's move on. Peter, I can't thank you enough for all of the work that you have done. My mood never improves after talking to you. But I am appreciative of the knowledge. Can I get a read from you on how optimistic are you that we can turn things around with this election?
I'm cautiously optimistic. Look, I mean, the bottom line is we have to be realists. The reminder here is that we don't want to be optimistic because you're naive, but you don't want to be pessimistic because then you just give up all hope. And the bottom line is I do think that look, there are people around Trump that have Chinese connections, but there are also people around Trump that recognize this problem. And I believe those are in the closer inner circle. When you look at Kamala Harris and Tim Walz, I mean, Tim Walz did not get money from the Chinese, but he fits the definition of a fellow traveler. And my fear is that with him as vice president, because he's had exchange programs, with China for 30 years, they'll make him the point person on China policy. And then, God forbid, I think we're going to be in deep trouble.
So you're going to be in deep trouble. Peter, when you look at everything that is going on and what they are now admitting to and saying, we're going to do price controls, we're going to do unrealized gains tax, their stance on war, their stance on everything. I mean, there is no way that if that's your plan, which is coming together oh so nicely, especially when it comes to controlling free speech all around the world, and we're involved with it in England and in Brazil, there's no way that Donald Trump, that they could allow him to win, because he really is the only thing standing in the way of all of these very nefarious plans.
Yeah, I mean, this is the weird place that we are in America, Glenn, where you have, Donald Trump, who sort of breaks all molds. And one of the people that's vigorously supporting him is Robert Kennedy Jr., who also breaks a lot of molds. And they will disagree on certain policy positions, but the point is they recognize the essential problem. And the essential problem is this desire for control and dominance. Where the left has essentially been fused with corporate America. Big government and big business are not enemies; they're actually allies. And this is the place that we find ourselves. And I think what the Harris campaign is really trying to do is bank that a sizable proportion of the American population, voting population, is going to be ignorant. So they play this game where they talk about these policy prescriptions that really don't have widespread popularity. This tax on unrealized gains is just ridiculous, but they're obscuring it enough to where they think that a lot of people won't even be aware that that is her position. That's the game that they're playing, and I still want to have enough faith in America that people are going to see through that and understand what's going on.
Yeah, I hope so. Peter, thank you so much. God bless you. Keep on the
Thanks,
on the trail. You bet. Peter Schweizer, investigative journalist who used to be one of the most beloved investigative journalists when it came to government corruption because he rats out both sides. That's not good enough anymore. You can only rat out one side, and it has to be the conservatives. If you do it to the other side, you're over. But luckily, his books are well read by millions of Americans. So he continues to do his job.